What's up everybody, Kinetic here and welcome back to Dragon Age Inquisition. In this video we're going to be talking about party composition, tactics, and behaviors. One of the things I've seen a lot of people ask for advice about is how to prevent their ranged fighters from getting too close into melee range. In Fade Rifts like these, especially on the higher difficulties, it's extremely dangerous for most mages and archers to get too close to the action. So this video is going to be talking a lot about the different testing and settings that I changed around to prevent that from happening. But before we get into that, I would like to first talk about party composition. Now, the way that I think about party composition isn't necessarily about which characters specifically by name I bring, but the balance of roles. My main character is a DPS warrior. I still need a tank, so I usually bring Blackwall, and then I bring a rogue and a mage to also fill in the party. This means that I can knock down any walls that need knocking down, open doors that are locked, and energize things that need energizing. I do change around party members though still quite a lot. I may change Sarah to Cole or Solace to Vivian or something like that. So one of the recommendations that I've seen people give around to prevent their ranged fighters from getting too close is they set their characters to follow or defend other characters in their party. So for example, they might set their rogue to follow their mage to follow the tank to defend the rogue, or something like that, right? The way that you do that is you set them to follow or defend by name. So if I set, for example, maybe Sarah to follow Solace, as soon as I change one of those characters out and put somebody new in, that means I have to go back and change all my settings. I don't want to do that, and I thought I could probably come up with an easier way that would mean that I can get my characters to act the way that I want them to without having to change their behaviors every time I change out a party member. So I started experimenting with them either following or defending themselves, and the results of this were quite interesting. I originally tried this out with Solace and with Varric. I set one to follow themselves and the other to defend himself, and the results were interesting. In both cases where they were set to defend themselves, they would get way too close to the fight. If they were set to follow themselves, they would stay nice and far away from the danger of the rift. To satisfy my curiosity as to whether this had anything to do with Varric or Solace in some weird way, I swapped out the both of them for Dorian and Sarah. I had to do a little bit of skill tweaking here to make sure that, for example, Dorian wasn't using Fade Step or that Sarah wasn't using Shadow Strike. I then repeated the testing exactly the same way as it started with Solace and Varric. I had Dorian set to defend himself, and as you can see here, he starts running way too close to the fight, while Sarah, who is following herself, is staying nice and far away from the action. I then reversed these settings, putting Sarah to defend herself and Dorian to follow himself, and the exact same thing happened. Dorian was then staying nice and far away, and Sarah was getting way too close. So after all this testing, I came to the conclusion that the best way to set up these behaviors is set them to follow themselves. Get your ranged characters, both your mage and your archer, to follow themselves. This is going to almost ensure that they are going to stay as far away from the danger of the fight as possible. They may still have to reposition themselves if their skill requires them to get closer to cast it or to perform that action, but in most cases they seem to stay nice and far away. This behavior setting seems to work really well for tanks as well. I set Blackwall to follow himself and he did really well like this. Now normally I would have control over my Reaver warrior, but I did test some of these settings as well. Two of the ways that I think can be really effective is you can either set your other melee character to follow your ranged character, or you can also set them to follow the tank. Either way, they seem to work really well with the settings like that. If you're a mage or an archer, one of the things that you've probably had an issue with is how do you start a fight off? Do you start by attacking yourself, or do you have somebody else attack for you? In most cases, it seems like when you go to initiate a fight with your ranged character, it means that everybody is going to instantly aggro you. And then you have to hope that your tank runs in and takes aggro for you, otherwise they're going to start chasing you around and you have to go on the defensive. To ensure that your tank is the one that takes aggro instead of your range character, what you can do is really simple. Just go into your tactical camera before you get into a fight and tell them to run to a certain spot. Also tell if you have another melee character in your party to run along with them. So both your tank and maybe your warrior, for example, will run over there first and take all of the aggro before you and perhaps another range character get involved in the action. When it comes to giving advice on what your skill tactics should be, it's a lot harder for me to give advice on this because there's a lot of different variables that come into play. Your playstyle, your other characters, their skills, the difficulty and things like that, the type of enemies that you're fighting, all are going to change what skills you want to obviously have equipped and how you want them to behave. Ring of Pain, for example, might not necessarily be a bad skill to have enabled, but sometimes the AI just doesn't know how to handle it properly, so you may want to just disable this sometimes and enable it for certain fights. Same thing for the skill Charging Bull for warriors can also be a problem for your tank or for your DPS warrior. You're just going to have to keep your eyes open on your other characters and see how they're using skills and when it's a good time to set these to enabled, disabled, or preferred. That's going to wrap it up for this video on party composition, tactics, and behaviors. I hope this video was a little bit helpful for you, especially when it comes to helping out your ranged fighters from getting too close to the danger zone. If you have any other questions regarding these topics, let me know in the comment section, and either I or hopefully somebody else that's helpful browsing these videos will give you an answer to your question soon. The holidays are coming up here in late December, so the pace of my videos is likely to slow down as I'm spending more time with friends and family, but happy holidays to all of you out there. Thank you so much for your support this year, especially with these Dragon Age videos. It's been really awesome. Have fun, stay safe out there, and stay subscribed. More videos are coming up as quick as they can. Thanks again for watching. My name is Kinetic, and I'll see you next time.